Greetings from Costa Rica. I'm Matt Rosensteel, and today I'm joined by
Simon Pitman.
We're neighbors here in Guanacaste, Costa Rica, a mile outside of the community of Playa Junquial. Simon has a career that's very different than mine. He works remotely from a home base here in our neighborhood in Pueblo Verde. So today I wanted to get his perspective as someone who's living this traveling, online working, remote lifestyle, because a lot of expats are interested in keeping their US, Europe, or Canada jobs and moving to Costa Rica.
Yes.
So Simon, thank you very much for joining us today.
Yes.
If you have
Thank you, Matt, for having me.
You're welcome. If you have any questions, feel free to send me an email. My contact information is in the description of the video. Today we're going to cover just a few brief topics with Simon. First, I'll ask him to describe his sort of career and how he uses Costa Rica as a home base. Mm-hmm. Second, we'll go over some of the technological issues, connecting remotely to the internet, etc. And finally, we'll discuss the logistics of traveling in and out of Guanacaste. And actually, I'll have Simon touch on why he chose this particular region, in particular out of all the places you've been in the world. So without further ado, Simon, why don't you, if you would please, give us a brief overview of the logistics of your life, what you're doing to earn a living working remotely here in Costa Rica.
Okay, yes, so I've been a journalist for about 20 years, and I recently relocated here as a home base back in September 2019, and I actually came out here with my job, but further to that I decided to go freelance. So since January I have been freelance. So yeah, I've been building up a freelance portfolio of clients that I work with. I'm a business journalist. It was relatively easy at the start, and then we had the pandemic hit, and that did impact things. I think the first things to be cut or put on hold were freelance budgets. So but that's by the way, I that's what I've been doing all this time, and for the last 4 months, that's me sitting in my house over the road.
And we're sitting actually about 15 feet from my house and probably 400 feet from Simon's house. We are neighbors, and he had purchased one of a small number of lots here in our community. I know that right now, especially because of the pandemic, this is May 1st, 2020. We've been in quarantine. The borders have been closed since March 19th. So you've essentially been working just like a huge part of the world, only on the internet. How has it been getting an internet connection in this area? Have you been able to stay connected with clients and family and friends? And how has that gone for you since moving to Costa Rica?
Well, I think remote working, your connectivity is always the most important thing, and it's often challenging, and that can be challenging no matter where you live. Mm-hmm. So I've had some challenges setting up my internet connection, but I was fortunate to have a very good friend who's a bit of an IT expert, and I consulted him, and I came up with a solution, very simple solution, just a mobile modem router, and I got a booster, a signal booster. Bought that in from the US, and that's really worked very well for me.
So the mobile router plugs into the cell phone network?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
So there's no cable involved.
Yeah. My wife and I have been dealing with a DSL copper connection that does experience all kinds of issues, and I think that no matter where you're looking in Costa Rica, you might find that there are a few places that have that ready-made internet connection fully installed and ready to go. There are communities throughout the coast, especially the more developed areas where you do see fiber optic. But here we have either this DSL connection, a phone line coming into the neighborhood, In Simon's case, I think you've got something up on a bamboo pole at the moment, or was that only temporary?
That's my signal booster, and it's on a bamboo pole. Yes, it was the cheapest and easiest solution because the bamboo grows here on the properties.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the nice thing is that no matter where you are, we're in an eco neighborhood a kilometer away from a very small area that doesn't have much infrastructure. But using the cell phone data network, a bamboo pole, a signal booster from the US, and this modem that plugs into the cell phone network, are you able to video conference with people and actually have conversations, or what kind of level are you at?
Yeah, I mean, the speed of the line is not absolutely crazy fast, but it's been sufficient. I have been able to do video conferencing. I have been able to stream Netflix, maybe even more importantly. So yeah, I've been quite fortunate in that my setup has allowed me to do that.
For sure. And to me, the bottom line is that even in these situations where we're somewhat isolated here in our neighborhood, you're able to come up with something that's been sufficient.
Yes.
If we were out at the beach, there's fiber optic connections springing up that we're anxiously trying to get into our neighborhood, but that life is coming up here technologically slowly.
It is. We've also got the added challenge of we're surrounded by significantly large hills here, which do block the signal, so that's something to overcome as well. Yeah,
we have a particularly interesting topographic situation that these hills are blocking what could be an easy internet connection through our phones or the data network, for sure.
And whereas I wouldn't do without the hills because they're absolutely magnificent, but yeah, when it comes to signal, challenging.
For sure. Now, right now, no one's traveling at all. Your business, attending conferences and promoting those, is stalled. But logistically, how do you will be flying, I don't know how many times per year, visiting different parts of the world. How is that going to work for you logistically, living here in Guanacaste and doing those events throughout the year?
Well, I wanted to scale back some of my international travel for, just for my well-being, and also, do my bit, save the planet. I don't like flying too much. So coming here, I wanted to step back flying so much. But before the pandemic hit, I was still, getting around. I was attending conferences in throughout the Americas, in North America and South America. And it was relatively easy. We have an international airport an hour from here. So, I could get connections to all over the world. Relatively easy.
Did you find the prices were significantly more? What kind of premium do people pay?
Before this, I had lived in the US. I was living in Chicago and New York, which are two massive hubs, and you can get direct flights to anywhere. So direct flights, not so much. There are still some, and definitely a little bit more expensive, but not crazy expensive. Not eye-wateringly
great.
And traveling to Latin America, which I do for my work. Sorry, to South America. I travel quite a lot to Brazil. That's relatively easy from here because I'm already halfway there. So.
Great. And so you've lived in Chicago, you've lived in New York. What are some of the other places in the world you've seen? I've only lived in 3 locations for more than a month in my life: Indiana, Guanacaste, and technically a 3-month stint in Spain, but you've been in many more places. Would you touch on the portfolio of places you've either spent, sort of traveled, or some of those places, and how did Costa Rica compare? How did you land here among the amazing wild places you've been and experienced?
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, my trajectory has been probably all over the world, without wanting to sound too braggadocious. But I did a stint in Asia, Asia Pacific for about 5 years. I lived in Australia and Hong Kong and Kuala Lumpur, and then back to Europe and then to the States. So I kind of, traversed the world, and all the while working as well in all these different places. So then I came to Costa Rica about 12 years ago and just fell in love with the place. I just thought it was beautiful, and I thought it would be ultimately worth my while to sort of like try and buy some land and see how it went. So I did that. I bought the land here about 6 years ago.
I didn't realize you'd been here as of 12 years ago,
Yes,
though.
yeah,
Really?
visiting.
And it was mainly the aesthetic beauty, the beaches, the forests that...
The vibe, the fact that, amenities and infrastructure are pretty good here. I've traveled to other places in Latin America, and I think this is on a pretty high standard, which made me think it's livable.
Yeah.
And also the economy and the political situation here is pretty stable. And in other parts of Latin America, maybe not quite so. So that was also very attractive. I thought that's going to make Costa Rica more livable. Yeah.
For sure, in the long term, I don't really appreciate that stability and the economy that they have, having only lived in Indianapolis, Indiana, or Spain and here, but definitely compared to other countries in Central America, South America, the feedback I hear from people is that, yeah, you can notice the infrastructure, and the feeling is one of much higher stability and quality of life.
Yeah.
I think that's reflected in the cost of living.
Yeah.
This is probably not the cheapest place you've been around the world,
Yeah.
or how do you feel it compares in...
It's definitely not the cheapest place in the world, but when you live somewhere, you've got to think about infrastructure, you've got to think about medical care, you've got to think about the political structure and stability as well. And I think, you get what you pay for, really.
For sure.
So I find it kind of reassuring that it's a little bit pricier, because with that comes more stability,
Yeah.
and greater confidence about living here.
Yeah.
I might add that as well that there is more of a safety net here. There's a universal health care system in place, which has its limitations, I know, but so do most universal healthcare systems. And then also there's a welfare system in place for Costa Ricans. So I can't benefit from that, but as a whole, the country does. And I think right now we're in the middle of the pandemic, and I think Costa Rica's going to ride it reasonably well because of those safety nets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're joined now by one of my dogs. We'll try and keep her from ruining things. As a quick update on the pandemic, for context in this video, Costa Rica sort of maxed out, flattened the curve around 600 to 700 active cases. At this juncture, we've had a couple weeks now where steadily we've been seeing fewer and fewer cases now, as there are fewer new cases than there are recuperated ones.
Yeah.
Of course, that's based on Ministry of Health information that I'm sure is imperfect, but very much, it's interesting. I've been here now through 2 crashes. In the first crash, I had only lived here for a couple months when the 2009 and 10 financial panic really started sending things into a spiral.
Yes.
I was somewhat unaware, simply because I hadn't been here when times were good prior. Now we're seeing the economic fallout of a very different nature from COVID-19, and I also feel like we have 2 young boys here. Some people, around the world, you started to hear everybody start to worry about, oh, well, there's going to be an increase in crime or this, that, or the other because mass unemployment, et cetera, et cetera. But I really do share your confidence that the safety nets that Costa Rica has the fact that it's warm year-round here, the fact that there's food growing in a lot of places, the fact that they have universal health care and a ton of government programs that sustain people, you know, one way or the other. I feel like we're well positioned. You haven't seen a spike in crime. In fact, there's been a huge decrease because of the travel restrictions and the vehicular restrictions, but this seems like a corner of the world that between the government safety nets and the quality of life, the economy, that hopefully we won't see too much of an adverse effect. But obviously we're still May 1st here. We'll see how things progress over the coming months.
Yes.
Final thoughts on what, you know, you've lived here now since September of 2019, so you're really, that's when you became permanent. It was September of 2019. Okay, so you've got 7 total months under your belt.
Yes.
What has been your absolute best? I'm glad that I moved to Costa Rica because X, and then I'll ask you for something that's been a negative.
I can cycle down to the beach, and I'm there in 10 minutes on my bike, and I have a beautiful beach,
Yeah.
a selection of beautiful beaches, you know, on my doorstep.
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and the environment in general here, you know, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah.
You've taken advantage maybe more of the beaches in your 7 months here than you know, we're not necessarily people down there, but that's great. Cycling down to the beach is your biggest pro. What's one challenge that, you know, especially in contrast to living in Chicago or New York, that you've been dealing with in your first 7 months here?
I think getting things done, paperwork, bureaucracy, that can be challenging. I lived in France, which is sort of a country with a socialist heritage, and you know, it's quite bureaucratic. There are wonderful safety nets in place, but alongside that, there's quite a lot of bureaucracy. So, you know, coming from the US, where the bureaucracy is like thinner, should we say,
Yep.
to here, it's like it's not something I'm not used to, but it was something. There's hurdles that you have to overcome with you know, setting things up, setting your utilities up, setting the internet up. You'll need paperwork and proof, and you know, trying to get people to come in and set
Fix
things up, fix things. Yeah, that can be challenging.
For sure. But getting established now, I think that's the sweet honeymoon period in Costa Rica where you come in and maybe you don't have services, you don't have a car, you really have to struggle through those first hurdles to get your connections, get set up so that you're fully mobile, etc. And then eventually you get into a groove where, yeah, I see you jogging or cycling or whatever down to the beach 5 or 6 days a week.
Yeah.
You're able to function even though we're in a somewhat isolated little neighborhood here. And
car, you know, the isolated neighborhood, car is crucial.
Yep.
And, yeah, you really have to invest in the best car you can afford.
Yeah.
You know,
For
you
sure.
need a reliable car. That's
For
very
sure.
important. Yeah.
And aside from a car, would you have any salient tips that have come to the forefront after your first, you know, 6-7 months here for people considering moving here?
Well, yeah, I would say, you know, choose your location wisely. Think it through. I think that, you know, there's lots of benefits to living as close to the beach as possible, but think outside the box. There's benefits of living a little bit further from the madding crowd, as it were.
Absolutely.
We're a little bit further out from the beach, and I wouldn't change that.
Yeah.
I like it.
Having lived here for a while now, we fell into this location by sheer luck.
Yes.
I knew the person who offered me this lot in exchange for working for them. We didn't think about it, and we just landed here.
Yeah.
Sheer chance. After 8 years, I think, oh my goodness, I am glad that we're a little back. For us, the beach isn't that important.
Yeah.
And we really lucked out that we had the highway, that we've got decent internet prospects.
Yes.
We have amazing water here, things that necessarily we didn't really weigh ourselves because we just made the chaotic decision to take advantage. But for sure, as you're considering your location, there is something to be said for not being in a major tourism community, getting away from the crowd, even though you might have to put your modem up on a bamboo pole, or a signal booster up on the bamboo pole to bring internet to your house. Simon is working remotely from Costa Rica. He's been here in our neighborhood just outside of Playa Junquial since late 2019. Today we covered a couple aspects of living that remote works lifestyle, both the internet and the travel, compared Costa Rica to some other places, talked about some pros and cons. Thanks very much for joining me, Simon. I have some other expat interviews with testimonials about different aspects of living here. People who have purchased condos in ultra-secure buildings, people who really wanted to be absolutely on the beachfront. So please check out other interviews if you want some more information from people who have just moved into different situations here in our quiet area. Thank you very much for watching. Feel free to subscribe to my channel if you'd like to stay updated with new videos. Simon, really appreciate your time today.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure, Matt. Thank you.
Also appreciate you buying a lot from me, I don't know, 5-6 years ago now in my neighborhood.
No regrets yet.
Great. Thank you. Have a great day. We hope you're well, and please take care.